How about you?
For what?
De-escalation.
Well, today on the After Dark, boy, do we have a treat for you. We are going to be going into an in-depth discussion about Jeremy Saulnier's newest movie, Rebel Ridge. And we got a great guest for this conversation. He is an actor who has appeared as Bill S. Preston Esquire in the Bill and Ted movies and who will be appearing in Waiting for Godot on Broadway next year. He's also the director of films such as Zappa and The YouTube Effect, and he's working on an upcoming film called Adulthood. Alex Winter, welcome to the Filmcast.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here. I'm a big
fan.
Woo!
Woo! The feeling is mutual. Alex, tell us about this movie you're working on. I know it's like not even out in festivals yet, but we're all curious about it.
Yeah, I'm actually leaving here to go work on sound with my amazing sound designer, Lon Bender, who is a legend in the field. We've done 4 or 5 movies together.
I mean, and we're so grateful that Alex was able to squeeze us in, negotiated the schedule to squeeze us in during the post-production process.
It's a very taut indie crime drama with a streak of black humor running through it. It's starring an incredible cast. It's Josh Gad is in it, Kaya Scodelario, Billy Lord, Anthony Kerrigan. I'm in it. It's just an amazing ensemble that I got to be part of too.
Wonderful.
And, so I'm in post all the way through, essentially through the end of the year, and then we'll roll out and do the festival thing, and then we'll come out next year.
Well, we're all looking forward to checking it out, and of course, you're welcome to come back on after the movie's out to talk about it if you'd like.
Great,
but we're so grateful that you've joined us here today on the podcast to discuss Rebel Ridge.
You tase him?
Nope.
It's not too late. You want to get tased?
No, sir. I'd just like to know what I did.
Rebel Ridge is the latest film by writer-director Jeremy Saulnier. We are here on the Filmcast After Dark talking about it with Alex Winter. And Jeremy Saulnier, definitely a director whose career I have been following since the very beginning. Not since Murder Party, but since Blue Ruin. I've been following this guy's work. I think he shot Blue Ruin with a Canon C300, if I recall correctly.
Oh, wow.
Probably right. Yeah.
Those were the days.
And he did shoot it as well.
Yeah, he did shoot it as well.
Yeah.
Super talented filmmaker. Alex Winter, you want to tell us about your feelings about Jeremy Saulnier's movies until this point?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm a huge noir person. It's probably my favorite genre. And I've studied it a ton, including the literature. And it's very rare that people make them nowadays, especially in the States. And it's even more rare when they're good. So Blue Ruin hit my radar right away. Green Room, I think Hold the Dark is also great. And I had reached out to him. We're sort of all part of this WhatsApp thread that started during the strike before this movie came out, just to tell him what a fan I was. And I didn't really know what to expect with this. I've been very busy in post on my film. I didn't know anything about it. I think I'd read some of the dramas he'd been going through on it. From a production standpoint, but I didn't know anything about the plot at all. Nothing. I didn't even watch the trailer. But I was happy that he'd made another film, and I, hit play as soon as the day it came out. And I was you just know when you're in the hands of a good filmmaker, the very first frame of the very first shot just grabs you by the throat. And there's very little going on in it. It's just a sign of a master filmmaker. It's not an intense moment. There's nothing happening of that much import for at least the first 4 seconds. And, but you just are breathless. And there's not that many filmmakers that can do that. I just think the film is a masterclass in sustained tension. So I was so happy. I texted him as soon as I was done watching. I was like, I'm so happy you're making movies, that you're out there making movies, because he's just so damn good.
Yeah, well, indeed, the production of this movie has been quite troubled. Notably, John Boyega was the lead role in the film, and apparently just left.
Wild, yeah.
I think a couple times for what
literally
just continuously,
just got up and walked away.
Right.
And they had to go and try to find him in his hotel, and and I cannot imagine being a director in that that would be a huge blow to any project, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we just talked about the Joaquin Phoenix thing.
The Joaquin Phoenix thing, right?
Let's say they were already in production, and apparently they went to look for Boyega at his hotel, was not there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Alex, if you're making a film and you're
it happened to me. It's happened to me a couple times, but with a lead, thank God. But when it happens on any level, it's it is like a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of production nightmare you have that is normally a nightmare. That's just so bizarre and irrational.
Also, you have no pants on for some reason.
Exactly. It's like a no pants production nightmare. Yeah. The other one I have, because I storyboard, is that I'm just storyboarding like these weird things that make no sense and they're unshootable. And I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, thank God. But having an actor go AWOL is that's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
We're going to share some brief overall thoughts on Rebel Ridge, each of us, and then we're going to get into spoilers. Devindra Hardawar, your thoughts on this movie?
Well, yeah, I freaking loved it. I think the easy review for this movie is Rebel Ridge rips. It is just insanely efficient in terms of how quickly it gets going. Like, I think within a minute or two, you've got the setup, you've got what's happening, and this movie like immediately infuriates you, gets you on the side of the hero. I think it's incredibly well made. This is more of a legal thriller than anything Saulnier has done. I think also a little different too, because his movies are typically about like a person from outside, like somebody who does not have these skills, trying to like break out of a situation or break into a situation or trying to accomplish something. And it's usually about like seeing people try to like struggle to do things even though they're not super skilled. Now it's like you put him in charge of Rambo and you let him just rip, and it's just so entertaining, so smart. The action's fantastic. I love everything about this movie.
Jeff Kanata, really curious your thoughts on Rebel Ridge.
Yeah, I concur. I will be shocked if this is not in my top 10 of the year. It is an incredibly awesome movie. And in fact, Terry Richmond is the name of the lead character. I want there to be Terry Richmond movies.
Yeah.
This is non-lethal John Wick. You know what I mean? It's like let's have the non-lethal action hero series. That's awesome. The coolest thing about this movie too, the action is cool and it gets there. But I would say a full 2/3 of this movie, the action is dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those movies I love so much where you have two characters or sometimes three in this tete-a-tete that is as thrilling and edge of your seat as any action sequence. And it's just two people standing nose to nose talking to each other. But the writing is so razor sharp and biting and smart, and you get the power dynamics and the struggles there, and the reveals are so expertly handled where you don't know exactly what's going on with everything, but you're so curious, and then a little bit of tidbit and you're putting stuff together, and it has so much faith in the viewer. And my goodness, is Aaron Pierre awesome in this movie. Aaron Pierre and Don Johnson both. Man, Don Johnson, wow, like what a performance from him. But Aaron Pierre, like this quiet, restrained power that he brings to this part. We talk about Boyega potentially doing this. I think he probably would have been excellent as well. I like him as an actor, but what a star turn for Aaron Pierre. I mean, I've loved him in stuff before, but this feels like, a movie star just showed up, and he's going to be, I hope this catapults him into huge roles and a big, long career, because he's fantastic in this. It's such an awesome movie. Where it goes, how it teases things out. I just had such a blast with this movie. Loved it.
I saw someone mention that M. Night Shyamalan really missed an opportunity to have Aaron Pierre in Trap as well, in addition to playing mid-sized sedan in the movie Old.
Yeah,
because
what a name.
He could have put mid-sized sedan in the Trap Old universe, basically, and that would have been a delight. But yes,
5
I
people
agree.
would have clapped if he did that, but that would have also been me. Yeah.
I actually found an interview that I did with Jeremy Saulnier in 2016 for promoting the movie Green Room. This is at /film.com. And Jeremy Saulnier has a very specific way of writing dialogue. He actually talks about it in this interview. He says, I have a rule. By and large, the rule is every character who's speaking, no matter what the scene or context, they have to be speaking amongst themselves. They're never going to stop and cater to the audience and offer them exposition. So like in the case of Green Room, he's saying like, you don't need to see the actual tour that the people are going on. You don't need it to explain to you. And then he says, like, you don't have characters saying, and here we have the bad guy skinheads. This is their culture. This is the youthful punk rock band. They're so naive, aren't they? End quote. You know, like, and that's something that I think is a signature of all of his movies, is like people just kind of talking amongst themselves, ultra naturalistic dialogue. This is probably the movie that needs the most exposition because of some of the complicated processes that it has to explain.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find, like, you know, as Jeff indicated, the dialogue to be pretty compelling. I'll share some quick overall thoughts. I also really like the movie. Kind of on the same page as all of you folks. One of the things I'm really impressed by is, you know, there are directors who, with every movie that comes out, they push themselves from a filmmaking perspective, right? Like the shots, the sequences are more complicated, more ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is a case of Jeremy Saulnier doing that. Like when you look at all of his movies, you know, Murder Party all the way to this, like every movie is more complex, just like from a logistical standpoint to make. And I really admire any director that can do that. I also found this movie to be super tense. The action scenes are incredible. There's not as many of them as I think a lot of people were led to believe by the trailers, but I think what's here is really incredible. The only thing I'll say, and we can get into this momentarily, is I was not a enormous fan of how the movie wrapped up.
Ooh.
So we can talk about that. But I thought it wrapped up a little bit too quickly, given some of the threads that had been introduced. But everything else until that point, I was on the edge of my seat. And I'm also going to say, this is a movie that actually has something to say. You know, it's ACAB Rambo, basically, or ACAB First Blood, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it has useful information in it.
About the way the world works right now. Yeah.
I was recently traveling to Las Vegas because to play poker.
The cops took all your money. Yes.
Well, this is one of the challenges if you're playing like higher stakes poker, is you need to bring like a significant amount of cash. And so I'm like Googling like, how much cash can you bring? And it's like, it's basically, for those who don't know, for a domestic flight in the United States, you can bring unlimited cash. But at any point, if the police believe that it's been used as part of a crime, that cash can be seized. And it's like, okay, well, that feels extremely arbitrary.
The best thing to do is when you're walking through security is just shout, "I have lots of cash, but it hasn't been used in a crime."
Yes, that'll
no
really
one will take it from you.
All right, anyway, Jeff, you had a reaction, and then let's get the spoilers.
No, I just was going to bring up kind of what you were saying. The movie really is of now. You know, it is speaking to the place we are in 2024 in a really interesting way, but it also is like this kind of whip smart, cool thriller. You know, it's both it's both this very entertain. It doesn't feel like it's soapboxing you, but it is compelling you to think about things that are perhaps useful to think about right now.
Like it teaches you how to use Narcan in this movie, for instance. Anyway.
I also think that it's you know, because it's sort of working off of like film noir mechanics, right? I think it's more than sort of, David, to your point, it's not, I think the First Blood comparisons are obvious, like superficially, but it's not like that movie at all, right? I think it's more like Hammett's Red Harvest or something that got, you know, like eventually got made into Yojimbo or whatever. But you know, this idea of like an unwitting PI, basically, who gets pulled into a conspiracy and has to work out the conspiracy. It's not really an action. There are action sequences in it, but it is not a film that revolves around action as much as investigation. And and that's what's so taut about the thing is, like, you know, as you said, the first shot, problem is established. From then on, he's got to figure out how to solve the problem. And we can get to the ending, but the reason I didn't mind the ending was, like, in a way, there was an inevitability to it that, like, it didn't, you know, other than, you know, get to spoilers in terms of the mechanics of police if you look at what just happened to Tyreek Hill, like, you do wonder whether it would just be paid leave for everybody, and that would be the end of that. But it's a very the way that Hammett was in those days, or Chandler sometimes, it's a very of the moment examination of civic corruption.
Yes.
That's very enjoyable and entertaining. And I think I've read Saulnier talking about how he didn't want it to get overly politicized. And I think he managed to not do that. I think that it really, yes, obviously the primary character is African-American, and that is significant in terms of why he's in the predicament he's in. It matters. But it's really just about the system, right? With a capital S, and a system that can F anybody. And this is one person. We've all been F'd by the system the way this guy has gotten sort of caught up in it on some level. And that's, I think, what's very relatable. And that's why I'm happy to see it doing so well on the platform. I also just want to say really quickly is just that the other thing is very satisfying about it on like a business level, just because our industry is so in the toilet right now, that it is so gratifying to see an independent movie do so well on a streamer. I just made an independent movie intentionally. Like I literally did it the old school way, like I used to do in the 90s. I got it financed. Like I went to Berlin with a reel and put it together with foreign finance, and then put some US money together. And like, there's ways to make movies now. And I think that there's monetizable ways to make movies now. And I think a movie like this doing well, and the fact that it's doing well on Netflix, is significant.
I saw Charles Bramesco, the critic, tweet the following: as Netflix shunts Rebel Ridge to an unceremonious mid-tiff streaming release on September 6th, their suffocation of Jeremy Saulnier's once exciting career is complete. And then Jeremy Saulnier actually responded to that post. And he said, Charles, just wait till you see the movie. Airways will be fully intact, I promise.
There's this like, and I understand it. There's, look, I made a whole movie about Napster. I understand the sense that the past is being erased and that it's being replaced with something terrible. That is obviously not entirely true, right? And it's also not fixable. Like, we can fetishize the past. We can try to recreate 70s cinema and shoot everything on film and only put it in theaters and only take it to festivals. But the fact is that the world is moving on into a new future, and a gazillion people are going to see Rebel Ridge. It's a win. It's just, there's no way to not call that a win.
Probably more people would have seen it than if it had been released in theaters in a convention
Completely.
Studio,
we went through this on Bill and Ted 3. Like when Bill and Ted 3 came out and we'd put so much effort behind it, COVID hit like the year, and it was at a time before any studio was ready to release films digitally, except maybe Universal was the only one that had done that. And MGM was like, oh my God, we got to wait for COVID to end to put the movie out. We're like, you guys, COVID's not going to end, right? So like if you do that, Keanu and I will be 70 and the film will die. And we convinced them to release the film digitally, and it did great, and it was, people were upset. Oh, I wish I could have seen it in theater. Sure, me too, of course, but it did great. And I just think that there has to be some level of embracing where we're going without this hyper fetishizing of where we've come from.
All right, let's talk about spoilers for Rebel Ridge starting out. So at this point forward, if you want to mention anything that happens in the movie, it's good to go. But I mean, we got to just at least briefly mention the first scene where you talk about where the nature of this guy's game is fully revealed.
Oh,
right?
What a so well put together.
Really well done, really well edited, cutting back and forth between his confrontation with Don Johnson and then the person looking up the Wikipedia page on which he is featured.
I love we got to reset the Wi-Fi. How great is that?
Everybody knows what that's like. It takes a couple minutes. But what a line is, he's on the Wikipedia page. Yeah. That's the line.
That's the line.
Holy shit.
It is very of our time. Maybe in 20 years, they're not going to be using Wikipedia anymore. It's all going to be ChatGPT or whatever. But like for now, it is a perfect line to summarize, oh shit, this guy knows what he's doing, right? Like that's a great way to summarize that.
Oh. I think he's on the Wikipedia page.
And I love how the action choreography for him is not spectacular, kind of cinematic movie action choreography for the most part. It's efficiency. It's brutal. It's just, dispense with the problem as quickly and as effectively as possible. And
it's such a great introduction to this non-lethal aspect that you guys were talking about, of like, you're wondering how that's going to play out, We're so used to these tropes turning into gunplay immediately. And that sequence is staged so well in terms of its shift from dialogue to action. Like, it's dialogue, intercutting with inside the police station. And then Aaron Pierre just like takes a quarter step forward. And like, and I'm watching this at home, like not with the theater, and I'm just like, like your breath is just taken away, and that's like writing, direction, action. It's just such a synthesis. It's such a satisfying cinematic moment. That moment.
I think all of whatever the action is in the movie is excellent. Okay, I'm gonna put that out there. I did see Jeremy Saulnier give an interview to Polygon. Friend of the show, I think Tasha Robinson interviewed him for Polygon, where he talked about talking, like doing some MMA, researching MMA, and he says, quote, "It didn't feel real. Some of the coolest action choreography ended up getting cut because if it didn't feel fully true based on Aaron's physicality and whoever he's up against, it had to go, which was painful but gratifying. The note to the stunt team was, we are paying homage to so many films, but we need to carve our own path and make this its own genre," end quote. Yes, I think the way they executed it, perfect. No notes even. But I do wonder what some of the extremely badass choreography that was cut was, because if this is what was left in the movie, like whatever was on the cutting room floor must have been freaking spectacular.
I trust his discipline to not start releasing a bunch of outtakes, which I hope they never do.
The hurricane kick that he does. I also, I can't say enough about Aaron Pierre. Like, I just thought he was phenomenal in every aspect, and he sells this badass Marine in every physical part of him. The way he stands, the way he holds his weapon, the way, like, everything, you are just constantly aware that he's aware of his body and everybody else's body in the space. And it's such a cool, subtle selling of that notion of this guy is in control even when he's out of control. And I loved that.
And he's still a human being with vulnerabilities who loses his temper, but again, not in a way where it's over dramatized or romanticized. He's still a guy, like that scene where he like tries to catch back up to the bus just to give his brother a fist bump. It's very gratifying. It's such a human thing to do. He's put so much effort and at stake into this sojourn. And so I just like and his relationship with Anna Sophia Robb, I thought played out really well and felt very human and real. And again, not romanticized and not turning into something bigger than what it was. They only know each other so well. But it had a very gratifying dynamic to it. I thought she did an amazing job. I think that everyone in the cast was very well orchestrated in terms of the ensemble.
That bike scene, by the way, I just want to say, like, great, like, cheer moment, but that also made me feel like, man, I wish I was seeing this in a theater. I think that specific moment where I was like, I wish I was surrounded by a crowd of strangers and we were all collectively going like, hell yeah, for this guy. And I think that is part of the thing we lose when we talk about the streaming move, because I hope people who see this movie and like this movie maybe go back and check out Hold the Dark, because I don't think Netflix gave that a pretty big release. It got kind of a lukewarm reaction when it came out. We reviewed it. I liked it. And I think that movie deserves a lot of, like, people need to go back and look at that movie, because it wasn't like his other
atmospheric, rhythmic movie.
So the crowd stuff, would have loved that at least. But go ahead, Jeff.
The other moment I wanted to point out was when he turns to the guy, he says, "I told you," and then the very next moment he's restrained again, he's in control. But like that burst of emotion when he finds out about his brother being stabbed, and he turns
his cousin.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, you're right, cousin. But yeah, it's just an exquisite, like, you see how he really feels, his humanity, as Alex was saying, but then again, restrained and controlled and understanding the stakes of the moment and what he needs to present to Don Johnson's character. You know, it's like, yeah, it's so good.
I wanted to just mention the ending again because I think that's kind of where some of my issues with the movie came in. I think the issue I had with the ending is just how quickly the Don Johnson situation resolved itself. And my perception was that the one cop kind of has a conscience and then runs Don Johnson off the road and then arrests him. And then I guess everyone's like, oh, well, the leader has been taken out, and so now we can actually be okay with Aaron Pierre's character.
It feels like there should have been like one thing connecting. Okay, I guess we're escorting them to the hospital.
Right.
Now. Like something.
Yeah, it just felt like a little bit too quick, given all the buildup of like how corrupt this place is, and it just felt like a little bit too pat to me how that was resolved.
I know what you mean. I think that just in terms of like the emotional kind of rhythmic energy of it, I was grateful that he cut to black when he did. Like I know that like there's a kind of a just a dynamism of energy, that whole kind of the choreography of the hospital entrance, gurneys, acts, camera, data drive out. And like, that was very gratifying to me. There was also something, I mean, you may be right. It's the kind of thing I'd watch a second time and go, oh, that's annoying. But like, all I know is that for me, when she ran up, there was something so kind of impotent. It wasn't like, if you look at a film like First Blood, right. And being old, like I grew up with those kind of movies. So like those moments of the villain were so over the top, like Stallone or Schwarzenegger movies, and this sort of grandiose vanquishing of the bad guy. Whereas like life is it can be so not that. And the idea that this woman who's black, who's working for these terrible people, is like, you know what, just fuck it. Like, boom. And the car just goes, brr. And like life just kind of goes on, and he's just kind of old dipshit anyway. And like, it's the system. It's not really the guy. And like, I don't know. I found something so gratifying. I think I wouldn't say realistic, because I think it's not real. The whole thing is like an allegory, but like I found it gratifying. It's just kind of like when you're in a crisis yourself, the way that thing can play out in such an almost mundane way. And the fact that the sort of the ending suggests that, this stuff just kind of goes on and on. Like it's they don't have the chips anymore. Those are all destroyed. All they've got is this one camera thing that may or may not ever get admissible. The whole thing could get thrown out.
I was like, oh, so that solves the problem now?
I don't even think he's saying that. Like, I just think it's just sort of like, this is where this is going to end.
That's fair.
And maybe that was not his aim. Like that's just the way I processed it. It wasn't like a rousing, wasn't Norma Ray, right?
Totally.
So I found that kind of gratifying, because it was just almost like the end of a fight sequence.
Yeah,
right. I think there's something to the kind of pedestrian nature of the resolution that it feels true to the rest of the movie. That's bureaucracy. Bureaucracy kind of always wins, and this is as far as you're going to get. And he's clutching this thing, and it may be his salvation, it may not. He's black, so they may not believe. Like, so we all know how difficult that road ahead would be for him. And she's screwed, I'm sure, the cops. So I don't know. There was like kind of nice ambiguity, I thought, to that. Jeff, what were you going to say?
I think I side more on it. It didn't bother me. I loved the end beat that Alex is talking about.
Agreed. The final shot I thought was great.
So good. And the fact that he remembers to go get the thing out of the trunk so that nobody else has it but him. I love that.
Yeah.
But I think the connective tissue that's missing, that maybe would have solved your problem, Dave, is that it never seems to me that he is forcing the other cops to do something they don't think is right.
Right.
It seems that he's allowing them to do the thing that they've always wanted to do. He's allowing them to revel in their power. And so them turning on him at the end as a group felt to me a bit false, in that you never get the movie never gives you a sense that they would prefer not to be behaving this way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
If it was, we only get two people. We get the one cop who is helping in secret, and we have the black lady cop who's helping, who eventually helps. But we see her, and she's somewhat sympathetic to him early on. That connective tissue is definitely missing. I was fine with where Don Johnson left, but the idea that the cops would be like, okay, let's just escort them to the hospital. I feel like something was cut out, or some subplots or something. I almost wonder if it was in an effort to like depoliticize the movie a little more, because once you start peeling away at that, then your whole idea of being like, well, anybody can see what's wrong here. But if you start looking too hard at like the core of what's wrong with the cops, then it's like
it's funny. I didn't read the ending that way at all.
Yeah.
I didn't read it that they had acquiesced at all. I read it like knowing cops and how, I mean, look, sorry to get political, but how cowardly most of them are.
Go for it.
I felt that it's, you know, and that police department has been under scrutiny, and so they're all worried about losing their jobs, and the economy's all effed up, and they're all, you know, a hair away from going under, like economically themselves. I read it as they just have to acquiesce to the system that they themselves are also beholden to.
Right.
Like and that's one of the things I liked about the movie, was that the cops aren't played as all powerful. Like they're like, that's even the whole James Cromwell thing, which is the closest we get to an expo dump, right? But it's satisfying because it's James Cromwell, and I watch him read the phone book. But this whole idea that like their plot, the thing that Anna Sophia is so pathetic and dumb, and yet you get it because it's sort of the same as the DMV or the NEA or any government organization that's like fighting to survive for any morsel of funding, and like the dumb hoops they have to go through, and the fact that there's a system above them that they're beholden to. There's one shot, because I know what you mean. I had the question in my head that you all have, like, because there's a cut from when they're all on the road to when they're suddenly at the hospital, right?
Yep.
And it's like a wide shot, I think, and there's like
It's like
a shot,
helicopter or drone shot, right? Of them following
and
on
like
the road,
Aaron
right?
Pierre's pulling up, and there's like the wall of cops in the background. But the way it's shot, I felt like he just crossed this invisible line. Like the way I processed that wasn't like the cops were like, "Oh, we're gonna allow you to get away," as much as, "Oh shit, he's like over on the other side of the system now. Like he's beyond our jurisdiction."
But it takes a while to get there, is the thing. Like they're behind them on the highway while that tire's popped out, and then everybody just slows down. It's like, okay, we're gonna go here.
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, it's almost like you needed to reinforce that idea that he's crossed a line. They all recognize it.
Yeah.
In a moment of that, I think I just accepted that, but that I could see that.
I think it's a scenario where like the naturalism of the dialogue, you know, maybe like let the movie down a little bit. Because I think you're right. That's a great point, Alex, about like from a plot perspective, there are things that make sense about the ending. But just like in a quote unquote conventional movie, somebody would have been like, well, now as a result of A, B, you know, like someone would have said that.
Right?
But they don't do that in Jeremy Saulnier movies. So like, then you know, it ends up being a little bit later.
I do think that the most pertinent point that you bring up is this like looming thing that happened before the movie started, which is they came under scrutiny. The whole department had to appear better, and that thing is reinforced throughout the movie. That like, you know, he was really under the gun, and so they had to clean up their act, even if they didn't really. And I think that might even be enough to explain it. That they all see the writing on the wall, and like, Don Johnson's going down. Yeah. We're screwed unless we, you know, make this right.
I liked how Don Johnson played that in the film too. And that's the other thing about it that's very different from 70s or 80s movies like First Blood, where like the villain is very human. Like you feel he's not just a shit-kicking racist. I mean, he is a shit-kicking racist, you know, terrible police officer, but he's also so.
But he's not just that.
No, but he's not just that, and he doesn't just play that either. Like he really plays a bureaucrat who's under like the sort of like, you know, the police are very similar to like modern medicine, right? Where like the idea of what a doctor used to be in your mind or what a cop used to be in your mind in the old days. Now most of them are just like buried in paperwork, you know, beholden to like larger corporations or industries that won't fund them, that will dock them or penalize them at the drop of a hat. He's so beleaguered, like as he's almost like a DMV guy. Like, and I thought that aspect of it was really, because there's a desperation to that makes him more dangerous. And I thought Don Johnson did a great job, because you could have, I was wondering whether Johnson was going to want to play this in a mythical way, and I was so happy. I'm sure Saulnier wouldn't have let him, but I'm so grateful that he didn't. That he plays all the kind of pitiful colors of that character.
Yeah,
I agree. I think he's a very humanized version of that character. Very believable, I think, is the kind of word that I would use to describe his character. So
he's fantastic in this movie.
He is. He's great.
Man,
yeah,
so good.
Just real quick, I love that Saulnier said that he watched Don Johnson in the HBO Watchmen show, where he was also kind of like nefarious kind of law guy, and you can see that the reflection of that role here too. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What I was going to say is I love how the movie constantly presents ways that this all could be resolved. I love that. I mean, it's a very noir thing too, where it's like there's a constant. We almost got there. We almost made it okay. We almost, and then, but no, the hubris of and the ego.
And the fact that Anna Sophia Robb gets injected twice.
Yes.
I love that. Like, that's so ballsy. Man. Like, they're just going to do it again? Jesus, like, this poor woman, she just gets, like, pinpricked, like, every 15 minutes by these assholes. It's just, there's a humor to, I mean, I know that's very dark humor, but there's, in all of the Saulnier movies, including Blue Ruin, there is an undercurrent of humor of just, like, the world is just so screwed up. And trying to live in the world is so impossible. And there's an aspect of that that's very entertaining to this.
Yeah, I do just want to give a shout out to that moment in the movie, probably the most badass moment in a movie I've seen this year, where Aaron Pierre is on the phone with Don Johnson, right? And he says like, I was thinking, what if we just walk away? And Don Johnson's like, oh, well, now you're, and he's like, but then I was like, nah, like that. This is an amazing moment in the film that would have, like, again, Devindra, to your point, like, would have generated such a big reaction in an audience.
What if we just walk away?
Well, now you're starting to talk.
But then I was like, nah.
That I think that was at the end of the trailer too, and people were like buzzing about the trailer of this movie, and that contained all those things. I do miss the fact that we didn't get to see this with a crowd of people. I didn't get to see this with my wife yet. I'm looking forward to rewatching it, but it's one of those things. Man, this is a crowd pleaser, and the crowd is just out there somehow.
We should have both, right? I think that's the lesson. I mean, there's these debates of either or, and the reality of it is we need both. We need movies to play streaming, and we need them to be in theaters. It's totally doable. It makes no sense that we don't have a system in which that's happening. It's sort of like the big piracy fears of 20 years ago. It wouldn't siphon views away from the streamers. It would probably increase them.
Yeah.
Everyone would make money. We'd be able to keep making movies. Artists wouldn't be going broke. But it's like, I think we're still a ways away from that. But I agree with you. Like, I'd love to, like, I saw it at home, super fun. Now I'd love to go see it at the Egyptian, or, I mean, I know it played there once because Netflix owns the Egyptian, but I'd love to go see it with a crowd. Back in the day, I'd have seen this in Times Square, and it would have been a blast.
Yeah.
Quick also shout out I wanted to give to Emery Cohen, the actor, who plays, as some people might describe him, a Paul Walter Hauser type.
He's great
in the movie.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah.
And people were, I saw people posting about this, and Paul Walter Hauser actually revealed that, because basically, if you saw The Bike Riders, Emery Cohen plays a Paul Walter Hauser-esque character in that movie called Cockroach. And people were saying, so is this guy just like the new Paul Walter Hauser? And Paul Walter Hauser actually responded and said, I passed on The Bike Riders, but Emery Cohen beat me out for this role in Rebel Ridge.
Wow.
So, like, apparently they both went for this, and Emery Cohen got it, which I thought was really big of Paul Walter Hauser to reveal. So pretty interesting stuff there. All right. Anyway, any other thoughts? Alex Winter, you want to take us home for this review?
I love the movie. I think it's an incredibly modern film. It's I think it's got more in common like with what a lot of the South Koreans are doing, like Park Chan-wook, than what I wish more Americans were making movies like this. Lynn Ramsey makes movies like this, Issa Lopez, Park Chan-wook. But it's very rare to see like a really hard-knuckled, clockwork taught noir. And Saulnier has been doing it for years at this point. I just hope he gets to keep going and making movies the way he's supposed to make them and doesn't get blobbed into the big corporate streaming system, though, for his mortgage. I mean, maybe I hope that happens for him. But I just think I was very happy and equally happy to see it doing well, because I just think it shows the industry that people love movies and movies that work well. So it's kind of a win-win all around, I think, this thing.
Well, Alex Winter is an actor and a director. You may have seen some of his movies before. He will be appearing in Waiting for Godot on Broadway next year. And he's also the director of movies such as Zappa and The YouTube Effect. Check out his new movie, Adulthood, when it is out
2025.
in 2025 at some point. Alex Winter, we are so grateful for you joining us here on the Filmcast to discuss this movie today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks, you guys. It was great to be here.
That was a clip from the Filmcast After Dark. To get access to the whole episode, go to patreon.com/filmpodcast. You can sign up for ad-free episodes as well as exclusive After Darks. You can find the regular podcast at thefilmcast.com. And of course, like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.